My HOA president demanded I house refugees, but my gut screamed terrorist. You won't believe what happened next when black SUVs. A cold dread seized Alex Miller the day Carol Jenkins, the neighborhood association president, stormed into his bicycle repair shop. Her eyes, usually narrowed in judgment, now blazed with an almost unholy fury. "That cabin is for my family," she screeched, her voice tearing through the calm of Miller's spokes and gears, her flip-flops slapping a furious rhythm on the concrete floor. Alex was stunned. For 8 years he'd poured his life into his business, and the small Airbnb cabin out back was not just a side hustle, it was 60% of his income, booked solid for 3 summers straight. He tried to calmly explain his prior commitments, but Carol wasn't listening. His refusal ignited a neighborhood war. Suddenly Alex was an outcast, targeted by boycotts, whispered accusations, and bizarre prayer circles forming on his very lawn. All this because he wouldn't surrender his property to house her desperate relatives, supposedly fleeing a crisis in Prague. The pressure was immense, suffocating. Neighbors, even those he'd considered friends, branded him heartless, selfish, a monster. How could you turn away a family in such dire need, they demanded, their voices laced with moral indignation. Yet Alex couldn't shake a persistent, unsettling feeling. The family, led by a man named Vasily Korolev and his wife, Lena Petrova, seemed strangely out of place for refugees. Their luggage, a pristine Louis Vuitton set, gleamed with undeniable luxury. Lena's English was flawless, her demeanor oddly rehearsed, her gaze constantly shifting, and her phone always quickly tucked away whenever anyone drew near. Carol herself mispronounced Prague repeatedly, a small detail Alex couldn't ignore. He started to doubt himself, the relentless accusations chipping away at his confidence. Was he truly the villain they painted him to be? Then, one late night, a chilling sight would forever erase his uncertainty and freeze his blood. The initial confrontation had been a spectacle. Alex was live-streaming a bike repair when Carol, a walking billboard for her own authority in a tank top proclaiming, "HOA president, it's not just a job, it's an adventure," burst through his door. She clutched a clipboard like a weapon, her face a mask of outrage, as if Alex had personally offended her ancestors. His chat feed exploded with Karen alert messages. Outside, a minivan idled, and through the window Alex saw Lena, head in her hands, looking genuinely distraught. His first instinct was empathy. No one wants to see a family suffering. But then Carol began her dramatic plea, and things quickly veered into the bizarre. She dramatically gestured to the van. "This is Vasily's family, my brother-in-law's, Lena and the children. Their business in Prague, that's in the Czech Republic, collapsed. They lost everything, Alex, everything. They need a safe place while Vasily handles legal matters in Europe." Alex's live-stream chat went wild with comments about Czech geography, but it was Lena's quiet, nervous correction, "Actually, it's Praha," spoken with a perfect Czech accent, that truly caught his attention. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with her phone, closing apps with a frantic urgency whenever someone approached. Alex tried to maintain his composure. "I truly sympathize," he insisted, explaining his cabin was booked solid by families who'd planned their vacations for months, paid deposits, made travel arrangements. "I cannot simply cancel on paying customers. That's not how a business operates." Carol's face contorted, her voice rising to a shrill crescendo, her hands conducting an invisible orchestra of outrage. "What matters more, Alex? Money or human lives? These people have nowhere else to turn." It was classic manipulation, a playbook he knew all too well. Yet when he looked at Lena, her terror seemed profoundly real, far beyond the fear of homelessness. It was the look of someone trapped, watched, afraid of making a single wrong move. Then the designer luggage, a brand new Louis Vuitton set, shimmering in the shop light, easily worth more than his monthly mortgage payment. His livestream viewers were incredulous. "What kind of destitute refugees travel with bags like that?" they typed furiously. Alex, trying to be diplomatic, pointed it out to Carol, who waved her hand dismissively. "They were gifts from before the crisis. You can't expect them to discard the few nice things they have left." Lena nodded in agreement, but her eyes never met his, and she kept checking her phone every 30 seconds as if awaiting devastating news. The entire performance felt orchestrated, too polished, like actors hitting their marks. And where was Vasily, the supposed head of this collapsed business? "Immigration paperwork," Lena explained, a vague answer that made no logical sense. Immigration for a financial crisis? If they were Czech citizens, why would they need federal help? His chat was full of people highlighting these inconsistencies, and Alex felt like the only sane person in a room filled with people willingly believing a charade. By the end of their first encounter, Alex was certain something was deeply wrong. Carol plastered social media with posts about the Prague family, and within hours his phone buzzed with angry texts and calls from neighbors, accusing him of heartlessness. But Alex, a man who'd learned to trust his gut, stuck to his convictions. He saw Lena discreetly pay for coffee with crisp $100 bills, then minutes later tell neighbors she and Vasily were down to their last $20. The numbers didn't add up. The story didn't add up. It felt like watching a poorly acted community play. His instincts screamed for him to document everything, to keep his eyes wide open, and under no circumstances to hand over his cabin to people whose stories were riddled with holes. Then a detail so chilling, it made his blood run cold. Linda, frantic, deleting messages on her phone. In the reflection of a coffee shop window, Alex glimpsed a contact name, Command Base. Not Vasily, not a lawyer, but Command Base? Why? 3 days later, at the community barbecue, one of those mandatory events where forced smiles mask simmering gossip, Alex was trying to mend fences with neighbors who'd been giving him the cold shoulder. The air buzzed with sympathy for the poor refugees, and Alex felt the weight of their disapproval as if he'd single-handedly caused global conflict by protecting his business. Then a sleek black sedan pulled up, and out stepped Vasily Korolev. He was the epitome of carefully constructed destitution, designer jeans perfectly distressed, a haircut that screamed $300, an aura of curated victimhood. He carried himself like a magazine model, yet was supposedly financially ruined, left with only designer luggage. The cognitive dissonance was so profound Alex almost laughed aloud. Vasily's entrance was a theatrical masterpiece, an emotional reunion with Lena that would make Hollywood directors envious. He embraced her with just the right amount of desperation, spoke softly to the children in what Alex assumed was Czech, then addressed the captivated crowd. "Thank you," he began, in a perfectly modulated English accent, "for welcoming my family during this most difficult time." The neighbors devoured it, tears flowing, spontaneous applause, offers of casseroles. Alex, beer in hand, watched the man who just tipped $50 now claim to be rationing his last 20. The math still didn't work, but apparently he was the only one doing arithmetic. Carol, in full Karen regalia, documented every moment, her phone constantly out, posting updates about the beautiful reunion, ensuring everyone knew she was the hero. Within hours, Alex's inbox overflowed with her emails, escalating from neighborly requests to urgent humanitarian crisis in our community, in all caps. She filed HOA violations against him for hedges too tall and a mailbox slightly beige instead of pure white. She was meticulously creating a paper trail worthy of the IRS, measuring hedges at dawn, color matching his mailbox. By day 4, she'd organized a prayer circle in his front yard every evening, complete with hand-painted signs about community values. Alex couldn't leave his house without running a gauntlet of hymn-singing neighbors. Vasily's story grew more elaborate with each retelling: frozen assets by Prague police, a competitor's fraud, Google-translated legal documents filled with nonsensical jargon like Prague Business Court of Judicial Law Place. Yet the neighbors believed it all. Mrs. Henderson brought daily cookies. The retired couple offered their pool. Everyone competed to be the most generous, while Alex remained the villain for asking questions and refusing to cancel paying customers. His business was taking a serious hit. 6 Airbnb bookings canceled due to community pressure. His guests called and told he was heartless. People avoided him at the grocery store. Cashiers wouldn't meet his eye. His online reviews were bombed with 1-star ratings, branding him a refugee hater. The financial strain was immense, threatening his mortgage. He almost gave in. But every time, Vasily's behavior set off new alarms. An odd obsession with American infrastructure beauty, constantly photographing power lines, cell towers, internet cable boxes. He'd talk about documenting this for my colleagues back home, his modulated accent making it sound reasonable. But his methodical positioning, the systematic approach, suggested technical documentation, not tourist snapshots. Every night he'd upload these files to an encrypted server from Lena's porch, quickly closing his laptop whenever Alex walked by. Then Marcus Riley, his old army buddy, Tank, showed up unexpectedly. Marcus, now working for Homeland Security, listened intently as Alex vented. "Check cybercrime rings," Marcus mused. "That's federal territory these days." He urged Alex, "Document everything," spoke. "Take pictures, record conversations if legal. Trust your instincts. They kept us alive in Afghanistan." He left a card with a direct number. "Call me if things get really weird, not just HOA drama weird." Alex, initially thinking Marcus was overly cautious, pocketed the card. But Marcus saw patterns others missed. It got really weird. Walking his dog late one night, Alex overheard Vasily on the phone. Not Czech, Russian, Alex recognized phrases about American infrastructure protocols and network vulnerability assessments. Seeing Alex, Vasily immediately switched to English, babbling about Prague's weather. The abrupt fake shift was so obvious, even Alex's dog stopped and stared. Lena, watching from the van, looked utterly terrified, clearly in over her head. By week 5, his neighborhood was a full-blown war zone. Alex, its public enemy. Carol ambushed him at the grocery store, phone recording 20 neighbors gathered. "There he is," she announced, "the man who values money more than human lives." Alex, holding a bag of apples, knew this would be on social media instantly. She launched into a public shaming between the bananas and organic kale. "How can you sleep, Alex, knowing children suffer while you count your money?" The produce section fell silent. Phones emerged. Alex, the star of his own shaming video, was done being reasonable. "These children have better gear than most paying customers," he retorted. "Designer clothes, expensive electronics, luggage more than my mortgage. If they're refugees who lost everything, I'm the King of England." Gasps, headshakes, people recoiling as if poverty were contagious. Carol glowed with righteous indignation, accusing him of interrogating trauma victims. But Lena, at the crowd's edge, avoided his eyes, not with anger but guilt. She was part of the lie, trapped, the neighborhood fractured. 85% supported Vasily, boycotting Alex's shop, calling his Airbnb guests. Social media campaigns with hashtags about community values exploded. The Nextdoor app painted him as a heartless capitalist. Only 3 neighbors privately texted support, too fearful of backlash. Mrs. Patterson, an 80-year-old widow who'd lived through World War II, quietly observed, "Those children have better dental work than my grandchildren. And I've never seen refugees so well-fed and nervous at the same time." Lena's mask continued to slip. One evening, Alex overheard her pleading with Vasily on the phone. "I can't keep lying to these people. They're good people, and we're destroying their community." A pause, then her voice grew small, terrified. "I know what you said would happen, but this isn't right." She ended the call abruptly when she saw Alex's shop lights. The next morning, $200 cash and a handwritten "I'm sorry" note, matching Lena's signature, were in his mailbox. Unbeknownst to Alex, Marcus had been building a federal case. Similar refugee family emergencies had occurred in Utah, Nevada, Arizona, always near critical infrastructure, always followed by mysterious power grid or internet outages. Marcus was certain, but needed irrefutable proof before involving federal resources. Accusing someone of terrorism was irreversible. Vasily, emboldened by community support, grew careless. He claimed expertise, yet his answers to basic computer questions were vague. His descriptions of Prague's tech infrastructure nonsensical. Alex, who grew up with computers, knew these were glaring errors. Carol, predictably, accused him of discrediting a trauma victim. The real breakthrough came during Alex's live-streamed evening walks. He captured Vasily on his porch, on a video call, discussing synchronized network penetration protocols. His chat exploded. "Did he just say what I think he said?" Network penetration protocols weren't refugee talk. They were cybercriminal talk. Vasily, noticing the recording, instantly switched to Prague weather, but the damage was done. The clip went viral. That night, reviewing the footage, Alex's hands shook. In the background audio, the video call was still connected, and he heard phrases like target acquisition, operational timeline, and command authorization. Tomorrow was Operation Day Zero. This was no refugee business. It was a coordinated operation. Alex called Marcus immediately, sending the video. Marcus called back within 2 hours, his voice devoid of casual warmth. "Spoke," he said, "keep recording everything. Don't let them know you're suspicious. Don't confront Vasily. Don't tell your neighbors." This wasn't housing, it was national security. Alex was to help catch them in the act. 3 days later, Marcus, now a federal agent in full, serious mode, met Alex after hours. He locked the door, checked the windows. "Spoke," he said, his voice the calm, controlled tone Alex remembered from dangerous deployments. "Vasily Korolev is wanted by Interpol for cyber attacks on European hospitals that killed people." Alex stopped breathing. The puzzle pieces snapped into place. Infrastructure photos, encrypted uploads, technical jargon, strategic positioning. This wasn't paranoia. It was federal-level criminal activity in his neighborhood. The scope of Marcus's next revelation was terrifying. Vasily's family emergency was a 3-year global scam, a cover to target critical infrastructure with social pressure, enabling cyber attacks that caused maximum damage. His Prague business was a front for a sophisticated ransomware operation, targeting hospitals, power grids, water treatment facilities. People died when life support systems failed. The refugees his neighbors were so determined to help were actually advanced scouts for an international terrorist network, planning something catastrophic right here. Marcus showed Alex satellite imagery of his neighborhood, overlaid with highlights of every critical infrastructure point within a 2-mile radius. A power substation for 3 counties, a fiber optic junction for the entire region, a water treatment facility for 200,000 people. And Alex's cabin, his cozy rental, sat at the perfect geographic center, with high-speed fiber lines that could infiltrate multiple networks simultaneously. That's why Vasily needed his cabin, not just any temporary housing. He needed that exact location, that exact internet, to coordinate a massive cyber attack planned for election night. Then Marcus dropped the ultimate bombshell. Alex was now a confidential informant for the Department of Homeland Security. He received official paperwork, protections, protocols. "We need evidence of criminal activity, not just suspicion," Marcus explained. "Recordings of specific plans, documentation of technical preparations, proof of coordination with other cells." He handed Alex professional-grade recording equipment, disguised as everyday items, a pen microphone, a camera phone case, wireless transmitters disguised as household objects. The gear was impressive, the responsibility overwhelming. One wrong move, one flicker of recognition from Vasily, and Alex could be collateral damage. The federal investigation revealed details that dwarfed Alex's neighborhood drama. Vasily's network had 11 other refugee families positioned near critical infrastructure across the country, all preparing for coordinated election night attacks, aiming for maximum chaos. Lena wasn't just a coerced victim. She was an active participant, a logistics coordinator, playing the frightened wife while running scams for years. The children weren't even Vasily's. They were recruited actors. Everything Alex and his neighbors thought they knew was a horrifying lie. Carol, meanwhile, doubled down, her identity inextricably linked to being right. She called an emergency HOA meeting. Final vote, does our community have a soul? And invited local media, billing it as a story of a heartless businessman versus a refugee family. The irony was suffocating. She was providing Vasily the perfect cover for his final preparations, complete with community witnesses and media documentation of their welcome. Marcus coordinated with federal agencies, turning the meeting into a trap. Alex had to sit there, enduring his neighbors' votes to force his compliance, while federal agents positioned themselves to arrest terrorists. The 2 men claiming to be Prague immigration attorneys were Vasily's technical specialists, their legal briefcases filled with hacking equipment. Marcus showed Alex surveillance photos of similar devices used in previous attacks, sophisticated electronics designed to penetrate secure networks. They photographed local infrastructure, timed security patrols, nothing to do with immigration. When neighbors asked, they gave vague answers, but Alex saw them noting power grid configurations. These weren't lawyers. They were military-trained hackers. Marcus made one last desperate attempt to warn Carol, but her response was immediate and loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. "Stop harassing refugees with government conspiracy theories." She accused him of a deep state intimidation campaign. The neighbors rallied, a united front against federal overreach. Alex's isolation was complete. He was the guy who called the feds on refugees, the ultimate villain. The social pressure was indescribable. Hostile stares, whispered conversations, a constant feeling of being hated. The day before the meeting, Lena approached Alex privately, her mask completely shattered. "You're right to be suspicious," she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "I'm trapped. Vasily threatened our real families in Europe if we don't cooperate." She confessed they'd run this scam for 3 years, city to city, causing infrastructure damage blamed on system failures. "They're planning something terrible for tomorrow night after the community meeting. Something that will hurt a lot of innocent people." Marcus arranged federal protection for her in exchange for testimony, but she had to maintain her cover until the arrests. The weight of knowing the truth, while his neighbors prepared to celebrate Vasily's triumph, was almost unbearable. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. at the community center. 43 residents, local news, a heartwarming story of community support. Federal teams positioned themselves around every critical infrastructure point in the region. Marcus confirmed similar operations were happening in 11 other cities. "This is it," he said. "Either we catch them all tonight, or we're looking at the largest coordinated cyber attack in American history." As residents arrived, Vasily's associates set up their legal equipment, network penetration hardware. Alex realized he was about to witness either a historic federal bust or his community becoming collateral damage in an international terrorist operation. On their laptops, Vasily's associates typed, "Grid access confirmed, execute on signal." The meeting began, a typical HOA gathering, but the stakes were national security. 43 neighbors packed the community center, buzzing with excited whispers, anticipating a historic moment, just not the one they expected. Carol called it to order with her oversized gavel. Dressed in her best community leader outfit, American flag pin gleaming, the news crew set up, the reporter practicing her opening about community values triumphing over greed. Alex sat in the front row, surrounded by people who thought he was despicable, trying to act normal, federal recording equipment hidden on him, knowing tactical teams surrounded the building. The vote was a landslide. 95% forced Alex's compliance. Deafening applause erupted. Tears of joy flowed. Vasily took the microphone, delivering a perfectly crafted speech about American hospitality. "Thank you," he said, his modulated accent flawless, "for showing my family what America truly means. In Prague, such generosity from strangers would be unimaginable." The crowd was enthralled. Mrs. Henderson started a standing ovation that lasted 10 minutes. Photos were taken, documenting this beautiful moment. Alex sat alone, watching them celebrate what they believed was his defeat, knowing federal agents were about to crash the party in unimaginable ways. Then Vasily made his fatal mistake. Caught in the intoxicating wave of community support, feeling invincible, he began discussing technical details with his associates, loud enough for Alex's recording equipment to pick up. "Tonight we initiate coordinated digital infrastructure penetration protocols," he declared. His associates nodded, typing furiously on laptops, clearly not running legal software. One responded, "Regional power grid access confirmed. Fiber network backdoors established, standing by for synchronized execution." Alex watched in real time, every word recorded, transmitted. His neighbors, still applauding Vasily's gratitude, were utterly oblivious to his confession of cyber-terrorism. Alex stood, playing his role as the defeated businessman, finally forced to do the right thing. The crowd's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. More applause, shouts of "finally" and "about time." Vasily extended his hand, accepting his prize. Carol launched into a speech about American community values. "This is what happens when we choose compassion over capitalism," she proclaimed, gesturing at Alex like a reformed sinner. The news reporter began her live broadcast, describing how community pressure had swayed a local businessman. Everyone was so consumed by their victory, they completely missed the roar of approaching vehicles. Then the Department of Homeland Security rolled up. The next 60 seconds were the most surreal of Alex's life. First the sound, helicopter rotors, heavy vehicle engines making the building vibrate. Through the windows, a convoy of black SUVs formed a perimeter. Tactical teams in full gear took positions. Spotlights turned night into blinding day. The community center went dead silent. Realization dawned. This wasn't part of the program. Children began to cry. Elderly residents looked terrified. Phones emerged, not for community photos, but to record a military operation descending on their quiet suburban neighborhood. The contrast between the warm, fuzzy meeting and the sudden, brutal reality of federal law enforcement froze several people in place, unable to process what they were seeing. Vasily's reaction told everyone everything they needed to know. His carefully constructed refugee persona vanished, replaced by someone who instantly recognized federal tactical teams and knew exactly why they were there. "No, no, no," he screamed, grabbing his associates, desperate to reach the back exit. "How did they find us here?" His accent, posture, and demeanor shifted instantly from grateful refugee to experienced criminal. His associates tried to run but were tackled immediately by agents who'd been waiting. The legal briefcases burst open, revealing sophisticated electronics, clearly military-grade hacking equipment, not immigration paperwork. The transformation was so complete, so obvious, that even Vasily's most ardent supporters recoiled in horror. The arrests were swift and professional, agents reading rights, securing evidence, while the community sat in stunned silence, trying to comprehend what had just happened to their heartwarming refugee story. Agent Scott took the microphone, addressing the crowd with information that shattered their reality. "Vasily Korolev, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit cyber-terrorism against United States critical infrastructure." The word hung in the air like a detonation. Terrorism. Not immigration. Not business. Terrorism. Lena broke down, confessing through tears that Vasily had forced her participation by threatening their real families in Europe. The community realized they hadn't been helping refugees. They'd been providing cover for an international terrorist cell, planning to attack their own neighborhood's infrastructure. Carol's meltdown was agonizing to witness. Even then she screamed at federal agents about HOA meetings, board approval, and Vasily's excellent online reviews. Agent Scott explained to the crowd that Alex had prevented a catastrophic attack on regional power grids that would have affected millions. Suddenly, Alex wasn't the heartless businessman. He was the neighbor who had saved their lives by refusing to be bullied. The reporter switched from her community values triumph story to breaking news about terrorism arrests. Neighbors looked at Alex with a mixture of gratitude, embarrassment, and profound shock. The final crushing moment came when Carol was arrested for obstruction. Even in handcuffs, she tried to manage the situation, telling Agent Scott he needed to consult the HOA board. "This is highly irregular," she shrieked. "I verified his Prague consulting business on professional networking sites." The reporter captured it all, a perfect soundbite for how social manipulation could leave entire communities vulnerable to predators. Lena, handcuffed beside Vasily, tearfully apologized to neighbors, explaining how threats against her real family had forced her cooperation. Watching federal agents load equipment and suspects, while his neighbors processed the horrific truth about their refugee family, Alex understood something crucial about community dynamics and critical thinking. Sometimes the person everyone labels heartless is the only one thinking clearly enough to protect people from real danger. Standing alone against popular opinion isn't paranoia, it's survival. Had federal agents caught all 12 other terrorist cells across the country in time, the week after the arrests felt like living in a permanent media circus. News vans lined his streets. Reporters knocked on doors. Everyone wanted to know how Alex had seen the danger when they'd all seen a victim. The attention was overwhelming, uncomfortable. He never wanted to be a hero. He just wanted to protect his business and trust his gut. But now, national news interviews, book offers, security consulting requests poured in. It felt surreal, like watching someone else's life unfold. Federal prosecutors moved swiftly. Vasily's network had planned a coordinated strike across 12 locations, crippling power, internet, and emergency services for over 20 million Americans on election night. Alex's video evidence and documentation were crucial, securing terrorism charges, carrying life sentences. Lena's cooperation revealed a 3-year operation, causing infrastructure failures blamed on maintenance, but actually carefully planned attacks that killed 17 people in European hospitals. Neighbors' reactions ranged from genuine remorse to defensive embarrassment to outright denial. 60% offered sincere apologies, admitting they'd been swept up in social pressure. Mrs. Henderson brought homemade cookies for 2 weeks, apologizing for boycotting his business. The retired couple cried, realizing they'd helped terrorists scout targets for attacks that would have hurt their own grandchildren. But 25% remained too embarrassed to admit their error, avoiding eye contact. 15% moved away entirely, unable to cope with the media scrutiny. Carol's first call from federal detention was exactly as expected. "Alex," she said in that tone reserved for dense HOA violations, "this is clearly a massive misunderstanding blown out of proportion." She genuinely believed her research. Checking Vasily's LinkedIn and online reviews should have sufficed. Maintenance. His consulting firm had 5-star ratings. How was I to know terrorists faked their online presence? The cognitive dissonance was staggering. Even facing charges for obstruction and falsifying documents, she couldn't accept her judgment was flawed. Technical briefings with federal investigators revealed how close they'd come. Vasily's team had mapped local infrastructure, identified vulnerabilities in power grid management systems, established backdoor access for 3 counties. If they'd accessed Alex's cabin's fiber internet, they could have simultaneously attacked power, internet, water, and emergency communications. Coordinated with 11 other cells, it would have created a cascade failure for millions during a critical election. Agent Scott showed simulations, regions without power for weeks, hospitals failing, communication systems down. Marcus regularly checked on Alex, acknowledging the psychological toll of living next to terrorists. His case became a training example for recognizing social engineering tactics used by terror cells exploiting charitable impulses. The chilling part was learning about the other 11 cells. Federal raids happened simultaneously, but 2 families vanished hours before agents arrived. Warned somehow, Marcus confirmed the coordinated attack was disrupted, but experienced fugitives were still out there, potentially planning retaliation. This kept Alex awake at night, knowing he was personally blamed. The community implemented new security bylaws, documentation for emergency housing, background checks, mandatory reporting of suspicious activity. Federal monitoring equipment was installed, local law enforcement trained. Neighborhood watch expanded to include awareness of emotional manipulation. Alex's bike shop saw increased traffic from curious onlookers, but constant news crews made normal operations difficult. His Airbnb, now Freedom Lodge, exploded with bookings from people wanting to stay in the former terrorist command center. Financially financially beneficial, yet morally complicated. Other businesses struggled with negative publicity, but the most disturbing revelation came when Marcus showed him classified intelligence about Vasily's long-term goals. The infrastructure attacks weren't just chaos, they were preparation for something larger. Spoke, Marcus said, showing satellite imagery. Your community wasn't the target. It was just the test run for techniques they planned to use against major metropolitan areas and critical government facilities. What had Vasily truly started? 6 months later, justice arrived. Vasily Korolev received a life sentence for cyber-terrorism and the deaths of 17 in European hospitals. His associates 25 years each. The child actors were deported. Carol's sentencing was personally satisfying. 2 years in federal prison for obstruction and falsifying HOA documents, plus a lifetime ban from any HOA position. In prison, she tried to organize inmates, filed grievances about food, and wrote wardens suggesting policy improvements. Her cellmate, an embezzler, requested a transfer. Alex's business transformation exceeded all projections. Freedom Lodge was booked solid for 2 years, a symbol of vigilance. His bike shop, Terrorist Stoppers Bicycle Emporium, attracted cyclists nationwide. Reputation restored, instincts validated. He received a civilian commendation for counterterrorism, spoke at law enforcement conferences, testified in 12 federal trials. Speaking engagements became a second career, teaching communities to distinguish genuine refugees from sophisticated criminals. The other 11 cells were tracked down, the 2 fugitives caught. The international investigation revealed links to terror organizations in 6 countries. Alex's testimony was crucial. Community healing was gradual. 40 neighbors now attended his barbecues, many former Vasily supporters. Mrs. Henderson organized neighborhood watch programs, focused on suspicious behavior, not stereotypes. The retired couple helped with security awareness presentations, but some relationships remained permanently damaged. New HOA leadership implemented policies to prevent future manipulation. These policies were tested, successfully distinguishing genuine needs from security risks. The balance became a model for other neighborhoods. 6 months after her sentencing, Carol's final letter from prison arrived. On official stationery, her handwriting officious. Alexander, she wrote, my ego prevented me from acknowledging warnings. I falsified HOA meeting minutes and obstructed a federal investigation because I could not bear being publicly incorrect. I chose personal pride over community safety and nearly enabled terrorist attacks. I accept full responsibility. Then the characteristic PS, prison Wi-Fi remains inadequate. Should someone contact appropriate supervisory personnel? 1 year later, Alex's cabin was Freedom Spoke Academy, teaching kids bike maintenance and critical thinking. The sign read, Trust, Verify, Community. Marcus arrived for their monthly barbecue, grinning, carrying new case files. Ready for some consulting work, Spoke? He asked, showing photos of suspicious families in Utah. Looks like Vasily's network had more cells than we originally thought. Alex's response was immediate. Tank, I thought you'd never ask. Freedom Spoke Cycles is about to go mobile. From neighborhood villain to national security asset, all because he refused to let an HOA Karen bully him. Trust your gut. Ask questions. Never let social pressure override common sense.